me as a small restaurant trying to touch everything and see everything and trying to excel at every single thing we do, whether it's peeling a grape or peeling a tomato or washing a piece of lettuce, that's important to me because the respect comes from the moment it comes out of the ground. The farmer we buy our product from, I trust in him that he cared for that. Growing it, not putting anything on it, being as organic and sustainable as possible, bringing it to me honoring that product, washing it, processing it, storing it, cooking it or not cooking it, and serving it, putting it on a clean plate, serving it on a clean tablecloth, and giving it to a guest, and hopefully I enlighten him. Hopefully they experience something that makes them sit up and go, wow, I feel good.
One-third of all seafood sold in the U.S. is mislabeled. It's called fish fraud, a sort of bait and switch, you could say.
It's easy to identify a fish when it looks like this. Not so simple when it looks like this, which is why American consumers often don't get what they paid for.
And a huge chunk of the seafood that is caught around the world is obtained in ways that are illegal, unreported, or unregulated. And when billions of pounds of illegally obtained seafood makes its way into the global marketplace, it jeopardizes 1 million jobs and more than $115 billion in sales every single year. That's just in the United States.
Most of the seafood here that gets landed in Santa Barbara is exported immediately. Lobster within 96 hours is in Hong Kong being eaten by Chinese. 90% of the seafood that's caught in these waters is exported. There's just this disparity between what we are catching in our local waters, which are very productive and which are very well managed, versus what we're actually eating here.
The thing I like the most about being a commercial fisherman is the freedom and the sense of adventure that you get out of being out on sea.
Well, my son fishes with me on the boat, and then my wife Sherry, she comes down here on Saturdays and helps out.
I fished recreationally like a fiend as a very young child. Made my own fishing poles and was just loved the ocean.
Right now in the seafood industry, the current supply chain is really old and outdated, it's fragmented, and there are many players, and seafood passes through several different hands before it actually reaches the end consumer. Oftentimes when you're buying seafood at a restaurant or a retailer, what it's being substituted for is a much lower quality species. So you might be getting tilapia when you order grouper, and you're paying a higher price for it.
We depend on our deliveries, our brokers, and our purveyors to be trustworthy. That's what's so important about me, is building up relationships.
I'll take it. Okay. Yeah, I got them. I took them all. You guys have the best lettuce in the whole market.
You have to have a relationship with purveyors that you trust, and you hope that they build up the same relationship with who they buy from. And it's a very important chain, and it could break down anywhere along the line.
As a salmon fisherman that's really intimately aware of what his product looks like and tastes like and smells like, I've been at a restaurant on a number of occasions and they mischaracterize the salmon.
Let's talk about fish once it's filleted. That's, for the consumer especially, I think is a very, very difficult point, because there's a lot of fish, even when I see, I'll look at it and go, is that halibut or is that brill or whatever the case may be? And even if the skin is on, some skins they look the same as different fish, but it's a snapper, but it may not be a snapper what you were told. And for the consumer, I think, you know, that's a difficult place to be in.
These are difficult. Once they're filleted like this, I have trouble. I mean, I'm not an expert in post-mortem identification of fish. This looks to me like rockfish, like a rockfish fillet. I would say if either of these truly are red snapper, probably on the left. And then wild salmon, gosh, this looks pretty red. I don't know. It looks like there's differences in color. I would say this is probably wild salmon on the right. But again, you know, I'd be guessing at most of these. It's just finally reached a stage at which enough people have become aware that it has become a problem big enough to warrant legislation.
The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Capps.
The Safe Seafood Act is legislation that I introduced into the Congress of the United States to help consumers, people who buy seafood, to know where the seafood came from and to have as much information about it as they can when they purchase the seafood.
Her bill talks about sort of ratcheting up coordination between FDA and NOAA and making sure that they do more inspections just more frequently, and also kind of dealing with some of the actual labels, making sure that there are certain pieces of information on that documentation when it comes through the system. And then Padilla's bill is sort of more of a local approach, local meaning statewide.
This bill, SB 1138, which we're announcing today, will crack down on seafood fraud by establishing clear guidelines for how retail establishments shall name species of fish using the Food and Drug Administration's seafood list.
The biggest change that his bill would create would be to make it so that restaurants and markets and retailers in general have to use a seafood item's common name on the label as opposed to its market name. Market name oftentimes sounds more appetizing. It's going to change how you and I order and see seafood. That's kind of where the rubber meets the road.
I don't know what the outcome could be, and I don't know those in charge who are trying to get the bill passed what their goal is.
Labeling is done throughout many supply chains in the tobacco industry and the beef industry and all of our industries, and it's kind of a no-brainer that it should be this way in the seafood industry. These bills are pushing us towards this new age, and it's really just going to raise the bar for the entire industry to really be on their toes and to be ready with that information.
I'm kind of torn because in the organic industry, it was the federal regulation which ultimately took organic into a much larger industry and a much larger scale, which really accomplished the change that we as grassroots organic farmers wanted to see in the agricultural industry. But at the same time, it sort of shot the small producer in the foot because the regulations became overly cumbersome for the small producer.
I think more red tape doesn't make it any easier, especially in today's economy. Why spend that money?
What surprised me when I was researching this story was how concerned some of the fishermen were about the two bills. There was more to this issue than maybe what was initially presented by Capps and Padilla's offices.
There are fishermen who are breaking their backs to meet regulations, to meet guidelines that are set forth in policy, as well as through bottom-up processes. I would hate to see fishermen bearing the brunt associated with any legislation.
A top-down approach could create a situation where, if it was done insensitively, it could make demands on fishermen that wouldn't actually get at the challenge. When I land my fish, all the information that a consumer would need to be certain that my fish came from these waters is on a fish ticket. And so beyond that, it's not my responsibility, as you know, unless I'm marketing it myself directly.
Consumers need to step up and ask questions. I think they need to not be content to believe that everyone else is taking care of them or that the government is going to look out for them. Individuals need to look out for themselves.
Not everybody has the luxury that we have of being able to just go straight to the harbor and buy from fishermen. So for those people who are landlocked or can't afford that because it is sometimes a little bit more expensive, this would be helpful for them, just for consumer safety, confidence, health, all those things.
I think that the bottom-up movement where there's a demand for sustainable seafood products and empowering consumers with information, I think that can go a long way. But at the end of the day, you will still have some fraud, you will still have some mislabeling if there isn't a strong top-down regulatory authority making sure that this is being adhered to.
Our fishery here in California is one of the best, most sustainable fisheries in the world. And you've got low transportation distances, you've got the freshest seafood, you've got the most sustainable seafood, and it's just the easiest choice.
Just come down here to Santa Barbara, come buy direct from the fishermen. There's no labeling issues, everything's fresh, nothing's farmed, no GMOs, no hormones, nothing like that. It's all wild caught, sustainably caught seafood.
We can empower consumers with the knowledge that, hey, there are seafood products caught right here in your own backyard, and that you should be buying them because it's helping your local community, and that we can help everybody, including the local economy.
It's very easy to become depressed and go, what's the use? I mean, if we're this exposed and things are this bad, what's the use? That's easy. But you can give up the fight, and you can't give up hope, because hope in all facets of life is the most important thing.
Growing in numbers, growing in speed. Can't fight the future, can't fight what I see. People they call me